I speak in the name of my ancestors, the father of my country, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the goddess of my country, Ezeli, and my grandparents who taught me the ways of my ancestors. I received a lot of questions regarding Haitian metaphysics and its relation to physics, especially quantum theory. So I wanted to elaborate before we move on further as I go on into developing the philosophical system I call phenomenological structuralism in Haitian epistemology, as it is derived from Haitian epistemology. You can also go on to academia.edu or ResearchGate to pull down, to upload and download the articles. They're free online, so you can read up and follow the videos as well. So now where I want to take off from is the origins of consciousness. Before we could even get into the development of the complete philosophical system, we have to go into the origins of consciousness. Where does consciousness come from? Because theory develops from human consciousness, so we have to understand within the theory that I'm developing where consciousness comes from. So last time, in the last videos, we looked at the relationship between voodoo ontology and membrane theory. And some people ask me the question, do I put science above religion? Yes. For me, the scientific process is how human beings or how human consciousness experience the material resource framework we call the earth. That is how we survive. The scientific process is simply how we survive, and it is the ultimate form of consciousness that we have to survive in the material resource framework. And yes, I do believe that science can give us what we call noumena in philosophy, meaning that it can tell us via the research process what is the nature of reality as such. So it's not contingent upon our species being, but there is a true knowledge out there that science can reveal to us. So that being the case, we went over voodoo ontology in relationship to quantum theory. So the understanding is, just like in voodoo ontology, there is a parallel universe that reflects the world of phenomena that we experience. The quantum membrane theory argues there's a 5-dimensional superverse, of which the Earth is a 4-dimensional universe amongst a plethora of multiverses within that that superverse. And by introducing this 5-dimensional superverse, I argue consciousness is also constituted. The origin of consciousness is also constituted, just like when Einstein introduces the 4-dimensional universe, space-time becomes the extra dimension, not in the occult sense or in the religious sense, only simply to account every dimension we account for. There are properties or phenomenal properties that we can witness or to account for. So by introducing the 5-dimensional superverse, we introduce consciousness, which for me it operates at the subatomic particle level, along with the strong and weak nuclear forces. So by introducing the 5-dimensional superverse, I argue that consciousness is recycled within the 5-dimensional multiverses and stems from the 5-dimensional superverse. So consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the 5-dimensional superverse, of which our 4-dimensional universe is simply a bubble among a plethora of 4-dimensional bubbles. And consciousness, once it becomes embodied via what we call the God particle, the Higgs boson particle, consciousness is embodied and consciousness is recycled throughout the multiverse. So it's similar to what Einstein, or what Haitians call reincarnation, and even Plato argues that reincarnation seems to be an aspect of the universe. Buddha argues the same thing. So what I argue is consciousness is simply operates at the subatomic particle. It's a material thing. Haitian Vodou argue the same thing. So for me, I use Vodou in relation to quantum theory and science. Whatever science verifies or is postulated in Vodou is verified in membrane theory, then for me it becomes veridical. So we can explore that. Other elements in Vodou I disregard. For example, human beings turning into werewolves, I could care less about that foolishness. But anyway, so for me, consciousness, by introducing this 5-dimensional superverse, we get consciousness which is recycled throughout the multiverses, and it becomes embodied via the Higgs boson particle, and it produces the aggregate particles that we see in our universes and us with consciousness. And from there, I will introduce phenomenology once we get that, and that will be next week's segment. So I hope this brings some clarity for many of you to understand the origins of consciousness before we can get into the core of Haitian Vilokan idealism or epistemology. So next week we'll go into phenomenology and some of the other components of Haitian Vilokan idealism.